So as we start Unit 1, I want to just give a real brief overview to the whole course of English 200 Expository Writing 2. I could have done this in the introduction, but as that was video only, I didn't want to really mix the two genres together there. We'll talk a little bit about genres here in coming PowerPoints. But anyway, Expos 2, English 200, is an introduction to persuasive writing in which you are asked to consider the needs of your audience in order to make your arguments more effective. When focusing on your readers, you will need to make decisions about what evidence to choose, what organizational patterns to employ, and what tone and style to use. Importantly, this course enhances your ability to imagine the needs and values of your readers and to understand the reasons for why they might hold differing viewpoints. So you're going to really think about your audience and what will have the most impact on them, what provides the most, the most background, the most evidence, and really to clarify your position so there's not any misunderstandings. That's kind of the overall goal, is to become a rhetorically more effective writer in terms of argumentation goes. By the end of the course, these are our overall goals that we're hoping that you should be able to do, or to do even better than you already do them. Okay, and these are found in your writing supplement as well. Adopt effective process writing strategies, including invention, drafting, analyzing your own drafts and those of others, revising and editing. And we'll do that in some way, shape, or form for every unit in Expos 2. Construct an argumentative claim and develop and adequately support audience-based reasons. Identify and apply the core concepts of an explicit argument. We'll get into explicit and implicit arguments in this coming unit and units. So you're going to have to look at claims and audience-based reasons, evidence, warrants, credibility, conditions of rebuttal, as well as ethos, pathos, and logos, which we will absolutely get into here in Unit 1. Anticipate and rebut counter-arguments to your claims, reasons, and warrants, or use of evidence. Locate and evaluate appropriate outside research sources and effectively integrate and cite them in your arguments. And analyze specific audiences. And produce a broad range of arguments for various contexts and audiences. Evaluations, proposals, letters to the editor, etc. We really want this course to be as useful to you in the real world as possible. I don't want this to be one of those classes that you take and never come back to again. Many of you are going off into the business world or teaching computer usage. Whatever it is, you need to know how to argue effectively and to be clear in what you want and what you propose. And that's what this class is really going to focus in on. In terms of Unit 1, which is our actual first unit, the visual argument analysis, we have some key objectives, and I'll put these down for each of the 4 main units. For this unit, we're going to really focus in on developing and supporting an argumentative claim. So you're going to take a look at something, you're going to analyze it, and then you're going to kind of come out with what your interpretation of it is and how effective you think they are. And that's where you're going to analyze visual arguments, attempt to appeal to and persuade audiences. They're trying to persuade audiences, and we're going to see if they're rhetorically effective or not. You're going to demonstrate awareness of the rhetorical and design decisions that designers make when creating visual arguments. And hopefully you will realize as we go through this exactly how much goes into creating these visual arguments. It seems very simple on the surface, but as you kind of extrapolate the information, you really become aware of exactly what goes into creating this and how much people have thought about it. It doesn't just show up as an image. You're going to apply the terminology of argumentation and design, and we're going to identify and research an important public issue, and then we're going to use advocacy ads only for this assignment, so that'll help kind of leave it to be a public issue. What the assignment is asking you to do. Basically, this unit asks you to analyze the power of a visual argument for an academic audience of your peers. It's a neutral audience. It's not a skeptical audience, not an overly positive audience. It's to me and to all the rest of you. You will analyze the rhetorical appeals of an advocacy advertisement and then write an essay that argues how these appeals either work to be persuasive or make the visual successful or unsuccessful, depending, in persuading its intended audience. Sometimes a visual will be intending to do one thing and it doesn't work. Quite honestly, it doesn't work that well. And you're free to talk about that in this paper also, as long as you kind of maybe explain what they could have done or how they could have used those rhetorical elements a little bit better to help make their point. For your paper, this is what we're looking for from your essay. Your argument will provide a brief background about the issues central to the advocacy ad. So kind of let us know what the conversation is that we're coming into. You're going to identify the primary intended audience of the visual argument and any challenges this audience presents due to its specific views and or values. You're going to present a focused claim with reasons about how logos, ethos, pathos, and kairos work, or about how effectively or ineffectively these appeals persuade the audience. You're going to develop your claim and reasons by explaining how the text and design elements from the visual argument work in terms of the rhetorical appeals. For example, you may analyze the advocacy's ad's use of color to indicate how the advocacy ad successfully emphasizes its pathos. Some common issues with this paper, things to avoid or things that people kind of do in their first draft that I want you to be aware of, so you can hopefully avoid them. All these things can be fixed, but it's really so much better to be aware of them before you start the writing process. Otherwise, your paper can kind of shift its focus and be off the mark quite a bit. So here are a few. Not demonstrating awareness of who the primary audience of the visual argument is. Leaving that out as a key component of the assignment. It has to be in there. Not researching the issue and understanding the various claims and reasons that these different groups of people hold. You need to know why they're saying what they're saying. You need to know how valid it is. You need to know what the other side of the issue is. You're only describing the visual argument instead of supporting an argumentative claim. So if you just give me a description of, the background is black and the text is blue, and you go through that for 4 pages, but you don't actually tell me why any of those choices were made and how they play into a rhetorical analysis, you're not going to do very well on the paper. Dealing with just the surface obvious aspects of the visual argument and overlooking more in-depth rhetorical moves and features. And I'm going to give you an example a little bit to hopefully clarify what I'm talking about when it comes to this specific pitfall. Analyzing the visual argument based on your perception of it instead of the intended audience's perception of it. Sometimes you might be biased against an argument, or you have certain beliefs that kind of limit your field of view. You want to be very careful with that. You really want to consider how effective it is for its intended audience versus maybe just your own audience. Not covering enough ground concerning ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos. I'm going to go over them in more detail if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about right now. But you should know that you need to cover 2 or 3 of those elements in your visual argument analysis paper in order to meet the assignment guidelines. Conversely, if you try and cover every single detail of ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos, if you try and do all 4 and you do everything, your paper will go on forever. You have to kind of limit your scope. Have some balance between the things that you're analyzing, and not go crazy with it. Remember, this paper is going to be 4 to 5 pages, not 10 pages, so keep that in mind. The general layout, and I said of this assignment, but really, it's this general layout is pretty good as far as introduction, body, and conclusion goes. For most essays, and you're not required to follow this to the letter. It's just a suggested order to help you stay focused and organized. So in the introduction, you want to establish your credibility. What research can you present to demonstrate that you are knowledgeable about the issue? You might not know anything, but you can find research that helps kind of set the tone for your essay. You can establish the significance of the issue. What is at stake with this issue, and who is arguing? Why is it controversial? What are the consequences of this advocacy ad? Identify the primary audience of the visual argument and show understanding of the audience's values and beliefs. State the argument of the visual, including its main claims, its reasons, and its warrants. You want to definitely do this next one. You want to provide a forecasting statement that presents your overall claim, so your thesis, and your reasons. How do the rhetorical appeals work to make this visually argument persuasive? So if you're going to analyze pathos and ethos, tell me that, but also, let your reader know in what ways do these things work the best or are not working, depending on how you're going with your paper. Be specific. What particular aspects of the visual argument make this argument successful or unsuccessful in persuading the intended audience? What key design elements are you going to focus on? Provide a thesis statement and then a brief roadmap of where you'll be taking us in your analysis. I can't stress that enough. You want a thesis statement and you want that roadmap of a sentence or two to let us know what we're going to be analyzing. And it helps you as a writer stay focused. You can always look back to that roadmap and be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be talking about next. Or I need to transition into this because this is where I just was. In your body paragraphs, in your body of analysis, you want to focus on different rhetorical appeals and how the design elements work. You want to support your points with specific design elements from the visual argument. So if you're talking about pathos, maybe we're talking about color, maybe we're talking about the look on somebody's face, things of that nature. You want to be really, you don't just mention them. You might have a whole paragraph about why that's important. Explain the rhetorical design decisions that were made in the visual argument. Solidify your credibility by correctly applying the vocabulary of argumentation. I'm going to be specifically looking for that one in here since that's one of our main objectives of the unit. Show awareness of the rhetorical challenges. What about the particular primary audience makes them resistant to the issue or claim of the visual argument? How do the design features meet or fail to meet these challenges? In your conclusion, you want to reinforce the overall dominant, persuasive, and rhetorical effect of the visual argument. Basically, I mean summarize your findings. You want to make it maybe connect back again with your introduction. I'll talk about that a little bit later in this unit. It's called shaking hands with the introduction. And you want to connect back to your own audience and your rhetorical purpose. What do you want us to take away from what you just argued? That's it for the general overview for Unit 1, the visual argument analysis. You may still have some questions at this point about the unit. Hopefully the other PowerPoints will clear that up for you. Thanks for listening.